So that's kind of where it is. Thank you. So there's still a couple other things I wanted to, here's some kind of pictures of the final. That's kind of just the whole project laid out in samples. And you can see the real solid black lines. That's where the different pieces are. Again, so like I said, I've got one-shot samples for the ride and then like the kick here. But then these right here, hi-hat, snare, and this K here, that signifies to me that's the original breakbeat that I was sampling from. And then I layered these larger one-shots here, the snare and the house kick. And you can just see there's a lot of different tracks here. Got a couple different layers of vocals here, and then, crash and a ride where I kind of arrange those out. So if you want to see that a little bit more zoomed in, that's kind of where you can see the hits laid out there all along. And you guys saw that picture of all the automation. All that automation is hidden right now within the track, but a lot of those tracks have automation within them. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I thought the strengths and weaknesses of this were. I think that I did achieve my goals. Like I really felt it had the rock and the funk vibe. It had the gritty, distorted synths, very baseline focused. I'm trying to remember what my other goals were. It was definitely breakbeat genre. So I was happy that I achieved those goals. It is very complicated, so I don't really get tired of hearing it, like even now, and I've heard this song hundreds of times. And it doesn't bother me. I still like it. And there are a lot of simpler songs that I get tired of if I listen too much, but it seems to me the more complex ones are better for long-term listening. And then also the kick drums preferred my remix over the original. In fact, they didn't release the original. They just released my remix. So I was pretty happy about that. It's been one of my pretty popular tracks. It's got quite a few plays and downloads. Some of the weaknesses, though, I think, is it is pretty complicated remix, especially for dance music, which is a pretty simple thing. So I could see why a lot of people would be turned off, particularly the arrangement is so long and there's so many variations that sometimes DJs really like to cut into the hook of the song and then move on to the next one. And it moves very fast, especially the more talented DJs. We got one in here right now. Also, because it's breakbeat and because it's complicated and because I was really pulling from some of those other influences with the gritty stuff, we are talking about a pretty small market audience here as far as a business venture goes for someone making music, with how specific I got with certain things. And then there's always the debate about dance floor compatibility. Can you dance to this? Yes. Would you be more willing to dance to this than maybe another much groovier song? I don't know. And again, a lot of it comes down to the DJ's taste that's playing, whether it's on the radio or whether it's on the club. So, like I said, it is good for listening. Really, it's good. It's been very useful for me in mixed CDs and on the radio. But it hasn't been as good for me when I've played it on the dance floor as a DJ. I mean, I've had moments where people have been singing along to the track, and I was like, this is crazy. And the whole dance floor was jumping. It was pretty exciting. And then I've also had plenty of times when it didn't go over so well. So often the way I use it now as a DJ is it'll be more towards the beginning of my set, or it's often a good, what I call a closer. That's a last track to play at the end of the night. Okay, so I don't know how much time we got here. I'm just going to close up with a few things, and I want to open it up for questions. But as a whole, remix and sampling culture is very rich and a very varied culture. If you think about it, it's like our gene pool. As every new original work is created, it is constantly varied and brought on. And sampling culture takes that even further. Remixing is often more of a macro type alteration of an entire work, whereas sampling can often take little pieces from here and there and there. And you can see that I did a significant amount of that in my own remix. from taking a break loop and then sampling one shots from other sources. And then again, a lot of it was original recording that I did myself. But it's very quickly evolving. Even in dance music, the genres just split and change like crazy. I mean, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of subgenres in dance music. It's kind of cool, and it can also be kind of self-defeating sometimes, I think. And there's a lot of issues with remixing and sampling, is balancing the copyright, protecting the original artist, and then also having a rich public domain. Something I wanted to bring up is music by law, when it is copyrighted, it is protected by the law, whereas the fashion industry is not. It's considered a utilitarian industry, and thus art in the fashion industry cannot be copyrighted. So everyone is remixing everyone else's clothes without, there's no law protecting it. But does anyone see the fashion industry suffering? I don't think so. The music industry is one of the ones that is suffering, and there's problems on both ends of the spectrum. If you over copyright, then people don't have access to really the basic foundation of continuing and varying our culture. But on the other hand, if everything's too free, then how can people make a profit as a business? And how can people get credit for their hard original work that they put into it? And I myself find myself in odd predicaments where I see people pirating my own music, in other words, kind of sampling and taking my music for their own for free. And that kind of hurts me as a business, although generally I think of it as free promotion at this stage in my career. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there are people that won't release their music for licensing, for sampling. And that kind of hurts because there could be a lot of cool variations out there. And then, of course, there's the philosophical question. Well, since everything is taken from something that came before it, what is truly original? So I just wanted to throw that thought in here and end with a few different quotes. One is by Alex Kaczynski, who's a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals judge. He says, overprotecting intellectual property is as harmful as underprotecting it. Creativity is impossible without a rich public domain, meaning a rich culture that is available to take ideas from. Nothing today, likely nothing since we tamed fire, is genuinely new. Culture, like science and technology, grows by accretion, each new creator building on the works of those who came before. Overprotection stifles those very creative forces it's supposed to nurture. And my last couple quotes here. Good composers borrow, great composers steal. And interestingly enough, that was stolen from immature poets imitate, mature poets steal from T.S. Eliot. So, thank you. Thank you very much. So I did want to open it up to anybody who had questions kind of about the process and the result.
I was curious to know if how often people add original vocals like you did for this remix to other remixes. Right. I thought it was kind of neat to hear that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't, especially in electronic dance music, I would say that it is actually not common at all. It's pretty rare. It was something that I kind of picked up just because I just wanted to do it. And one of my main things about songs is I really like the bridge area, and that was where I put my vocals. I really wanted to make that something powerful and new. So I kind of decided to put some new vocals in that section.
Yeah. What were the, if any, legalities with singing a cover of it versus sampling the original work?
Right. That is, I was afraid that question was going to come up. Now, I didn't do the cover. The Kick Drums did that, and this was released on their label. So I'm letting them take care of the legalities of that issue. But essentially, Craig Crafton isn't here today, is he? Okay. There was a great presentation a few weeks ago. A friend of mine, he does music law. I think he'll be teaching at Collin County Community College. But basically, yes, in order to cover that, they would need a license from the publishing to use the musical material, but they wouldn't need a license to use any of the sound recording material. There's a big division there. Yeah, basically meaning using the musical material, so the progression of the song and the lyrics as well. Now, what's interesting is the kick drums did not copy most of their lyrics, and you see they also kind of sneakily renamed the song. So again, that's a legality I'm going to leave on them. But just to take that one step further, in the electronic music world, believe it or not, the law versus what actually is happening that's kind of part of that's kind of not the lowest end, but that's really one of the biggest foundations of remix and sampling culture is in electronic music. And it's really a culture where people freely sample from each other often. And a lot of times there's not much legal action that's taken unless an electronic music musician is sampling from a very big song, such as, like the Black Eyed Peas or something like that. Good question.
Yeah, you said you were working with the Nord lead in MS-2000. Do you tend to, I guess, work more with hard synths?
I do.
Is that considered, I guess, the norm for your genre?
Oh, I wouldn't say it's the norm, and especially as synths get better and better in software and in the digital format. I think that's what's used most often. I do tend to be a hardware geek, and to make matters even funnier is I actually I record in live. I play it myself. I don't use MIDI to play in any of those notes. I play my synths live, and a lot of the automation I do on the synth itself as I'm playing. So like those, I'm often changing a mod wheel and changing the pitch at the same time while I'm playing a note or play the bass line. And I played the electric bass and sang too. That's kind of, I like to put as much of my art into it as possible.
We have 50 questions, but we'll leave them at 2.
Okay, 2.
Do you have any books that you would suggest?
Books? Oh, yes, I do. Now, if I could remember the specific titles and the authors is a different question. There is a couple, especially when I was at UNT, I was actually doing some pretty big presentations on the DJ and using of turntables. But there's definitely one that's called The History of the DJ, which is a very thick, at least 400 or 500 page book. But it's actually an excellent resource, and it's very legit. It's got actual footnotes that are solid academic resources. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
When you received this material, it came to you in separate tracks.
Yes.
If you had a younger DJ, who's trying to do something off a final product that doesn't receive the full mixes, he's going to have something that's compressed and everything's already put into it. How do you address those types of issues of trying to